Hey everyone, here's another race. This one was at T-Town from Cinco de Mayo. A great evening, beautiful weather, almost, well, very little wind, which was nice. A nice change from last week. So we're going to be going over as another like Cat 5 critique, taking a look at John's race here again, to see if there's anything that we can pick out and things like that. So, as always, the customary first 1.5, 2 laps is a rather light affair. So there's the pacer is going to take them around. I like John's positioning here. Now, I would assume he's going to probably get crowded here relatively soon. I'm basically just trying to stay relatively near the front without spending any unneeded energy, and kind of just rolling along here.
Hey man, you get a haircut? Nice. Weight reduction. Yeah, I bet.
So with the lack of wind, I mean, there's still a little bit, compared to last week on the finishing straight, the left to right, it's in that similar direction, but it's very light. Something that you can kind of keep in mind during the race, but isn't quite as important as it was when it was, blowing at 17, 18 miles an hour last week. So it seems like the last races here, both in the B and the A's, has grown in numbers of riders, which is great. But it also means that it's rolling along at faster speeds, which typically makes the sprints a little bit harder, and you need to rely a lot more on positioning in order to get you some points, as compared to a little bit slower where you're able to focus a little bit more on just putting out power to sprint, and it's a lot easier to move around. So we'll take a look and see. I know I'm still myself at the beginning of every year. Typically I do really good with getting points, but as the season goes on, it typically gets a little bit harder. Everyone gets a little bit more fit, and it's also it's tough to manage a group of more riders, just the quantity of them, and knowing exactly where you need to be in order to get into the position that you need, because everyone wants some points. Okay, so I believe at the top of this hill, that's where they kind of let things go, so that it's more of an open race. So I like how John is moving up a little bit here. So I think staying relatively near the front is not only going to help with if any splits occur, but also, excuse me, if any splits occur, but also, for the sprints itself. And typically people who are a little more fit will want to stay a little bit closer to the front, because they want to be able to follow any moves, where if you're a little bit more to the mid or to the back, the focus is a little bit more on just kind of holding on.
hole. Did you see that fly? Oh man, that's gonna be fun later.
One thing I would say don't be worried about kind of moving off to the side a little bit, even though I know you have a rider off to the right, but to kind of move them over a little bit and then let your wheels kind of come up in between. Excuse me. So, something that you need to be careful of is overlapping wheels a whole lot and then having people move. But when you're in the middle of a group, people aren't going to be able to move left to right, so you can feel a little bit more safe, and you don't have to worry about pulling on the brake quite as hard or as much when you're deep in the group, especially when it's going at a moderate pace, not super slow and also not blistering fast. So I'd say right now, alright. We're going pretty fast on the downwind side, which was great there. I can tell you're interested in some points. I just keep rolling the momentum here. People are probably trying to go for it a little bit. Everyone loves to blow up on that hill, it seems. Now's the time where you need to keep rolling. Keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling. Even though I'm sure you're tired. But that's going to seal you that position where you're third or fourth wheel. Like how you're off to the side. You are on the, there is a right to left here, but it's very minimal. So I think you're doing fine there. But I'd say right now you have to be in position ready to sprint. So just a little too far back. So I think at the crest of the hill, as everyone stops the pedal as they're going down, sometimes just staying on the power will help gain you a few positions. But you need to be careful. If someone's going full gas at the front, it's not time to move up because everyone's going to be just sprinting to stay on their wheel. It's when the group really slows down a little bit and you're able to just continue at 200, 300 watts to be able to slide around them. Oop, I saw you, I know you wanted to do that. I would have done the same thing. And sometimes the door just closes, so that's not a problem there. But what was different from this week compared to last was the group all stayed together. So you have a larger group, and I think most likely if it's not super windy, the group most likely will stick together because drafting, there will be drafting is a lot more feasible. Like obviously you want to draft in the when there's crosswinds, but when there's crosswinds, the draft is a lot more specific in its location. You want to be off to a little bit to the side, and there's only so much road that will allow for that drafting, and that's why the echelons are made, those rows of riders that are diagonal across the road, as well as the splitting up of groups, because if you're not getting a draft, that means that you're working just as hard as the person who's on the front, which means you're burning more energy than what you need to and you're working all the time at that pace rather than getting a rest by drafting. I like the idea there, trying to swing off to the side, see if any room opens up. Now, as you see a ton of people not pedaling, you gotta keep rolling on the side. That looks great, dude. Keep rolling up the side to lock into that position. See, we have 11 to go, so there was just a sprint last lap. Now I would say here, don't be afraid to move that elbow out and force yourself into it a little bit. Now you can't be quite as forceful as you would be on a regular crit, like a racing weekend sort of deal, because this is a little bit more like a gentleman and gentlewomanly racing, because a lot of it's just for fitness. But something that you can, what you're over 6 foot, something good to good to do is get in that draft. So by just slowly moving over, again, nothing abrupt, but getting the bars in front of that person who's next to you and slowly moving over will help with getting the position that you want. Nothing should ever be abrupt. So a slow move over, but look over to your side, let them know what you want to do in terms of just showing that you're looking at that location, and then you should be good. Now, in terms of your positioning right now for the sprint, I think you're pretty good because you still have about a mile and a half to go. Now it's just going to be maintaining, seeing where the group, seeing where the group is ebb and flowing, and make sure that you're not losing a lot of positions here. I don't think that this guy in the Cervelo jersey is going to be a good wheel for you. Just because it looks like they're kind of on their own, did a little sketchy there, and they're not really sliding into the draft at all, which can be good if they're making their own wake and they're helping you. But it seems like they're not really focused on trying to stay on a wheel, if you know what I mean. They tend to be just kind of going on the side, moving up, moving down, whatever kind of works, rather than sticking on the wheel and really getting that drafting benefit. Alright, we have a bell lap here. So I think your position is pretty good, a little bit far back, because you can see that there are people who are kind of creating a gap on the front, right? So this guy actually ended up being a pretty decent wheel, as long as he keeps that forward momentum. Right once you see him start freewheeling, it's time to try to hopefully find another wheel.
Inside.
That's tight. Right, because he's not gonna want to chase anything down. So I think you're pretty good here, maybe even a little bit far forward, because you have to be kind of counting down the efforts it's going to take to make it to the line. So let's see, I would imagine he's going to probably give you a flick. This might be the gentleman you're talking about, who just kind of pulls everything right along. So actually I might have been mistaken. This actually might be a pretty decent wheel, but I don't think you're going to get any big surges out of him. I would make sure you stay tight, protect that inside. And what I'd say here, just stay on his wheel, unless you're getting a lot of crowding around you, which it doesn't seem like you are. I would stay right on that wheel instead of you know, burning 400, 500 watts, then you're doing the, you know, some 300, saving some energy. So what I think happened there is you had that, it's not Rockland, is it? The guy who's on the left side of the screen now. It might be Rockland. So you moved out and he slid in underneath you, and then you basically lost that draft. So the inside line tends to be, you know, the line that a lot of people want to take. And so there, I think you kind of got pushed out because you weren't keeping nice and tight in. You lost the draft, and then instead of doing 250, 300 watts, oh no, I don't even know it. It looks like a Rockland kit, but it's not a Rockland kit. But instead of doing 250, 300 watts, you're doing 450 before you sprinted. So sometimes holding that inside line, if the person in front of you is relatively close to the inside line, I would stick off to the left side of that wheel in order to keep that inside line. So then you're only looking at people passing you on the right. And then you have the inside line for the corner. So something I know that I also need to do better on is that exact thing there. Sometimes the person in front of you, whoever you're following, is going to be maybe a bike length or two off to the right side of there, so it's tough to cover the inside at that point. But if he was relatively close, probably a half a bike length, so something that I would definitely keep in mind, because I think that's the reason why that guy, not because he has a superior sprint by any means. I think you have a great sprint, but I think the big thing, excuse me, I think the big thing is he had the good draft, he had the good positioning, and that's what really led to him having that good sprint and kind of having that slingshot around on the inside. Now the inside's not always the best, but if you can only focus on one person in terms of going around one side by protecting one side, then instead of having possibly two people come around you from either side and then coming back together and kind of pinching you off, you can just focus on one side, and typically they're not going to come over, deviate, and move you off the road. Typically it has happened, but then you yell at them. Yeah, so it seems like the Cervelo rider there on the left, he's probably the exact guy you're talking about. Just kind of keeps it nice and even, isn't going for the sprints, but is trying to keep everything together. You'll find a lot of people in the lower categories will just try to keep everything together. It's either a lot of people think that they're sprinters when, you know, really they're not. You know, everyone can sprint, but there are skills and qualities and putting in the time to practice on the sprint that makes you a true sprinter and be able to race and be a sprinter in the race. Okay, so it seems like that's a really good place to pass, but instead of doing 300 watts to get up there, or 350 watts to get up there, I would roll through at 250 watt, 200 watts, something that's definitely under your threshold. So 200 watts, and just kind of keep rolling, and then slide over. Maybe not slide over right onto the front, but slide over, and then take your turn if it's still rolling that way. But it actually looks like you're at this point, you're probably taking almost a half lap turn, which is not something that you need to ever do in a regular race unless you're trying to chase something back or you're in a breakaway. And you're increasing the wattage here. And now people are attacking off of you, which puts you in a tough spot, okay? So you have to think, you just did a hard effort on the front, or relatively hard, okay? Your heart rate's going to be up. Now that leaves you very vulnerable for attacks, which just happened. So now, maybe you're not in the red at the end of your turn, but you're a little bit gassed. Excuse me. Then, all of a sudden, people start sprinting around you, and those people sprinting are rested up, so they're able to put in more effort. So that puts you in basically puts you in a hole. Then you need to go into the red just to stay on, rather than to into the red doing an effort for a sprint. So that probably just dulled your next sprint. So little things like that, especially if it's a big group, I wouldn't worry about pulling on the front too much. And if you do pull on the front, you only need to do it for 10 seconds. It's those short, fast pulls where you're surging up a little bit and then flicking your elbow and making people come around. And if they don't come around, all you have to do is stop pedaling. Move off to the side nice and gradually, stop pedaling, and they'll be forced to come around you unless they want a track stand, right? But then be ready for those people who are looking to attack. Alright, so this is a sprint lap, so that probably dulled your sprint a little bit. I like how you have the inside, you're protecting that, but it looks like people are going, and you just unfortunately got stuck behind someone who basically just let everything go. Sometimes that happens. And right now I'd be looking up the road to see what they are doing. If they just did a sprint and they are coming back, like they're not really pedaling much, doesn't look like they're putting in much effort, then I would get behind someone, let them do the chasing. If it looks like they're getting a group together and they are starting to really work together, that's when I would do exactly what you're doing, sprint off the front and make it work. But see, are their legs moving? Are they really pedaling, or are they kind of bunched up? Good. Keep rolling, keep rolling, keep rolling, keep going. Attack, attack, attack. There you go. So you rolled your momentum. I would just keep it up and try to keep it up at 350 if you're able to, because that's what's going to help get you your separation. So if you didn't sprint there and you sprinted after, and that's good. And I think I remember you telling me that you had a little bit of a gap. So you carried your momentum through. There are going to be a lot of people who are basically just going to pull up to the back of the group, and they're not going to do anything. So I believe at this point, we might be able to see once we get turned around with the shadows to see if there's anyone behind you. But I believe it's you two who are off the front for this one. So that was basically in the A race. That's exactly what happens in terms of making a break happen. The stronger people who just did the sprint, who are gassed. You have the people behind that are just thankful that the sprinters and the people who are going for the points are kind of cooling things down. And then you have the people who want to use that as an opportunity to get some separation and get up the road. Because those people who just sprinted are kind of working almost as blockers. So a lot of them will typically bunch up. Yeah, it looks like it's just you two. So those people typically bunch up, and they will kind of spread across the road, almost blocking for you as well sometimes, because none of them want to pull, so then they kind of all spread out.
Alright.
Right. So it looks like you're probably hurting from your effort. Oh, you might have gotten caught. Yeah. Alright, so it looks like he got caught. That's okay. He was definitely worth the efforts there. And I like how you were probably turning around looking behind you, and then you shut it down when you knew that you were going to get caught. So it was a good idea. And the thing with that is you probably forced
Okay, sir,
those
all
people
yours.
to work hard to get you up and to get to get you in an advantageous place to be, which is up the road. Or not advantageous, advantageous place to be up the road. Alright. Yeah, so I would be resting in, relaxing, seeing what you can save up to do. Alright, so eating a little bit of wind here. I don't think that's really anything you necessarily have to do at this point. So it is going to be one lap to go until the next sprint, but I don't necessarily think that you have to be going around so many people. You can kind of take it or leave it. If you're really like, oh, I want to be right near the front, perfectly fine, because it will set you up later as long as you think that the people in front of you are going to be continuing to pull. Just like we said before, you need to kind of count down the efforts and kind of estimate what you imagine these people are going to be doing with doing their pulls before the sprint. I just woke up. Okay. So it looks like the speed is kind of getting ready to pick up. People are going to probably start going on this climb. So take a look and see what the people are doing in front. If they start picking it up, you know you need to do a little bit of a surge to prepare for that. So trying to keep your eyes up the road on those first few people will mean you're not surging quite as much. Ooh. I guess he wants the points. I'd follow that wheel. If someone's making moves like that and they're willing to put in the effort like that, I would maybe try to stick on their wheel. Because that means that they're really motivated to put in some work to... Alright. So now you have a wheel to stick on. I would encourage you have a kind of a more diesel guy on the right, and you have a sprinter more on the left. So I would say see where you can sit in, but once it gets closer to the finish, I'd rather be on the sprinter's wheel. But it looks like the sprinter might get boxed in. Alright, so be careful. That guy on the right might box you in. Good, you can get tight with those other people, get a little bit of a draft. So, let's go with that. It's tough because if someone came on your inside, you just went around them. So what I would say is really try to stay glued onto people's wheels. I know you have a really good sprint, so staying glued on their wheels right from the start will put you in a little bit better position to then be right up with them when people actually really start putting down the power. Good, there's that classic counterattack, so be ready to bring that up, see what the group is, the people in front of the group are doing here. So the guy who's right in front of you, just slightly to the left now, so just to the left now. So it seems like he was way too eager on the climb to get near the front, and then he just sat on the front doing almost no watts. So he wasted a lot of energy to get up, but he got up too early. He was at the front too early. So that meant that he was wasting energy in the front and might not have gotten points. Now, if you're really strong, you're definitely superior to, in power to a lot of people. That might be something that you can do, but saving a little energy and kind of being on that wheel is typically a better spot. Because in this sort of race format, you're not only thinking about, oh, I need to win this sprint and just empty the bucket. You need to think about, I have multiple sprints and I need to make sure I have enough energy to latch back onto the group. Alright. So, good. I mean, you moved up well. So if anything, it seems like the guy on the left that looks like a Rockland kit, but he's not on Rockland. It with the white top and the navy, it with like a little splash of red at the bottom. I would just maybe pick someone's wheel who you know is getting points, and I would try to surf on their wheel a little bit, see what things they're doing, if there's certain times that they're moving up, if there is certain lines that they're holding, staying on the inside in certain areas, outside in certain areas. Because sometimes, sometimes there are people who have been riding this course for a while and have just, maybe not gotten the upgrade points yet, but are getting close. And, they might have figured something out. So sometimes just sitting on one of those wheels can help you with, help figuring out the course. It happens the same thing in the 1-2-3s. There's some people that have ridden all these courses, so many times that they've figured out the the ins and outs of the courses, or they're better able to read the courses. So something to possibly think about. I'd say it seems like that Rockland, the guy who has the white jersey and the navy bibs, seems like he has a few things figured out.
Oh man, how many laps are
All right, so we're coming in. We have 1.5 miles to go. So if you can, I would try to continue rolling, because you have to think within a lap you're going to be wanting to be in good position. Just trying to set yourself up early is going to be the biggest thing, and then maintaining that. So it's like you have to get to the shootout in order to actually participate in it. But when you're actually you're able to make it to the shootout, then it's figuring out exactly what you have to do while you're there. Okay, but if you don't actually if you don't spend the energy or position yourself to get into that position, you're never going to be able to figure out what to do when you're there, right? So it's kind of like 2 stages. It's positioning to get you to where you need to be, and then it is, while you're there, just looking at other people, watching these, figuring out what else you have to do. Looks like that might have meant that you're a little gassed. which I get. These races are hard, and we haven't really been doing any specific training, but you're moving up. I like it. So even though you had to do a big surge with a lap to go, everyone's going to be motivated to go up. So something like I said, it might be a little bit uh, late, but I would say every opportunity that you can have, if there are people soft pedaling in front of you, every opportunity you have to move up, I would try to move up here. So if you see a wheel that's going, I would put in the power now to make it around, and probably staying on the right side of the group. Kind of pick a side, but typically the left going up here gets kind of cluttered. So if you really want to move up, I would try to stay off to the right side if you can, and make sure you keep pedaling. You just got to keep pedaling even as other people are not pedaling. So it's just making it to the shootout, right? Making it to the finish, even if you have nothing for the finish. You never know, you might get lucky, some people might be looking around, but I'd say right now you have to be moving up on the inside or the outside. Stick all the way to the left. So I'd say at this point, unless something drastic happens, which occasionally does, where everyone decides that they all want to have someone else lead them out, I'd say you're probably not quite there yet. So probably with about a lap and a half to go, at the top of that hill, you want to decide whether I'm going for this sprint or I'm not, and then commit to staying right at the front. Maybe not right on the front, but right near the front, to give you the best possible opportunity to make your positioning happen. And then once you're up there, it's just maintaining it, moving over, sprinting a little bit to stay on wheels, and those sorts of things. Alright, so a lot of good things. I think you're doing better with, especially earlier in the race when you have a little bit more energy. Just sliding over to the side, finding some openings. I think something to focus on is knowing a few of the people, checking the results, seeing who is moving up, seeing who is getting those points, and maybe trying to stick on their wheel. You won't be able to do it all the time, but it should put you in a pretty decent spot to, even if they're there leading you out, getting second place and figuring out where you need to be, the flow of it will put you in a lot better position than just trying to figure out how to make it to the finish here. So anyways, good race, good efforts there. We will hopefully the weather will be good next week, and we'll plan on going from there. All right, we'll talk to you soon.